Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Reality Benders. Today's guest is Ruslan. Now, I had this guy on for two reasons. One, he's gotten millions of streams on Spotify, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that, right? So he's actually able to live off his music, which is one of my goals. But the other reason why is he's absolutely killing it on YouTube right now. And so I had him on because I wanted to learn, what it took to get to where he is, and also, just pick his brain on the state of, the internet and how to take advantage of it. So enjoy. All right, well, let's get right into it. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Dude, thank you
Yeah.
for hipping me to a book. Not a lot of people hip me to books I've never heard. So you just got me hip to The Talent Code, which I'm looking up right now. So thank you.
Yeah. So basically what that'll teach you is just basically what's happening in your brain when you're developing skills. Like what it talks about is like when you fire a certain set of neurons, like when you're rapping, for example, right? It wraps this like fatty tissue called myelin around it, like insulating a wire, right?
Wow.
And when those neurons fire over and over again in repetition, the path gets thicker and thicker, right? And your brain wants to take the path of least resistance. So when it takes the path that's the thickest, that's where it's going to go. And that's why, like, notice when you rap and you get better, all of a sudden things that seem kind of hard just become kind of natural, right? It's because you develop that thick connection to where your brain just does it on autopilot now. Like, think about when you're driving, right? Have you ever just like zoned out while you're driving and it's been like 30 minutes and you're like, who's been driving the last 30 minutes?
That's good.
It's because that neural connection is so thick that your brain it's a really easy pathway. So it doesn't take a lot of energy. So you're not even thinking about it. Like you just do it.
Dude, this is dope. I'm looking up like different like book summaries on stuff. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's actually really cool.
But yeah, man, I wanted to have you on specifically. One thing that really caught my eye about what you're doing is like just the professionalism to like what you're doing on YouTube, like between just like, I don't even know how to describe it. You just have this like energy. It's almost like it's your own, like you have your own show essentially.
Right? I guess I do.
When it's like, but it's just like you talking to the camera about all the shit going in your head. And it's making me realize like, cause at least for me, this is like episode 12 of Reality Benders. So I'm really just starting to get into it. And I'm like finding ways to make it better. And like, you're making me want to go invest in like in a nice camera and a nice like setup now. Cause it's like, you're just doing it right.
Dude, the cool part is one, I want you to know that like your point about the talent code, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And two, the more you do it, the more therapeutic it gets. So for me, people are like, how do you stay doing all this stuff? Doesn't it make you sad? I'm like, no, man, it's actually super therapeutic. And it makes me not take any of this stuff I talk about as seriously because I get to just externally process in front of people. And then I just package it in a way that makes sense. And then I also want to tell you the third thing is the camera isn't that expensive. Like I'm about to swap. This is on a 7D Mark II. Yeah. This is on an EOS RP. And so I'm actually swapping out.
It's so funny.
Yeah. So I'm swapping out this camera, which is an $800 camera used. And this is a $500 camera, $600 7D Mark II. I'm swapping both of these out for the Canon SL3. I'm actually going to do an overhaul of my whole setup. And so Canon SL3 retails new for like $600. And so I'm going to save money by swapping out my camera. So I say all that to say it's actually not as expensive as you think to upgrade. The video switcher that lets me cut the camera angles is a $300 ATM Blackmagic Mini. So it's not even that expensive for people to get into it. And then I got a microphone here going into my Apogee Quartet. Yeah, man. So like
boom mic.
It's like a desk clamp. So it clamps on the back of my desk and then it goes over my MacBook. There's a my iMac right here. My MacBook's right here. And it goes over and then right here. And I got a second mic for when I have guests. So yeah, man, it's a Sennheiser, like $250 microphone, So the whole setup, like somebody could literally have my exact same setup, lighting included for under $3,000, maybe $3,500 at the most, which sounds like a lot, but if we're honest, a lot of musicians have way more than that in studio equipment,
I mean, I feel like if you're serious about this, it's not that big of an investment. And like, at least for me, like I'm at this point where, essentially where I'm at is all of 2019, I eliminated all of my debt. And
good for
now
you.
Now I'm, for going into 2020, my goals are to just like max out my IRA and outside of that, where I really started having my first breakthrough was with Facebook ads.
Let's
Right.
go.
And so right now I'm building up an agency. I started about a month ago. I'm up to 11 clients now,
Dude,
where
that's
I
amazing.
basically just run the Facebook ads for them. And all they do is send me an MP3. I run their Spotify campaigns. I charge them, $150 for it, a campaign, and just do everything
Nice.
for them. And
Dude,
then for
that's
me,
really cool, man.
but anyways, this podcast is supposed to be about you. So what I wanted to ask you, I've seen how you have this structure around you. I've seen you talk about like sync licensing, for example. What do you think is the most important things artists need to do to monetize their brand, and what should they prioritize?
That's a fantastic question. The most important thing that artists need to do, in my opinion, is develop self-awareness. Self-awareness allows you to develop brand awareness. And I hate that word brand a lot of times, but just knowing who you are in the marketplace. Once you know who you are, then you can reverse engineer who your audience is, what you actually do, and what you're good at. Many people get into this not knowing who they are, meaning there is no like, these are my values, this is my unique value proposition to the marketplace. And then you don't know what that is because you're not really self-aware on what you're good at. And two, you also don't know who your audience is.
Yeah.
The easiest way to discover what your target audience is, in my opinion, my target audience is me from 10 to 15 years ago. That's literally who I'm speaking to. Male,
Yeah.
into hip hop, has some kind of interesting intersectionality. Maybe they're an immigrant. Maybe they're, they don't fit into a political box. Maybe they don't fit into a musical box.
Yeah, that's what
They're
I love about
probably going to,
your shirt, politically agnostic.
yeah.
I resonate with that heavy. I was like, and I think that's most people, honestly.
Yes.
Like the media is so loud on the far left and right, but at the end of the day, like most people like understand that it's not black and white, and they see like it's just. I just like that shirt. But anyways,
Thanks, man.
to kind of build off that, it's like I feel like I'm just now finding what my message is. Right. So like you look at someone like Logic, for example, his whole message is like what? Peace, love, and positivity. So what I think my message is, really this. So my artist name is Outlook the Rapper, right? I go by Outlook because I'm giving my perspective. And I'm also like outlooking rap because I'm trying to make an impact deeper than just making a song. I really see music as an opportunity to shift someone's subconscious and like rewire their brain into a more positive, healthy mindset. Like, so
Yeah.
my whole brand is preaching emotional intelligence and the idea that like you control your thoughts and that you can control your reality through shifting your perspective. And so for me, that's my whole message. And now I'm trying to figure out how to bring that into my brand. And part of that is this podcast, right? Reality. It's called Reality Benders. It's about, talking to people that have bent reality towards their will and figuring out what they did to get there. And then I take all, this podcast, I clip it up, and I take any valuable skills and I'm documenting that and organizing that on my YouTube and my Instagram.
That's
So it's
dope, dude.
like a case study. And then now that I'm learning how to run Facebook ads, I can use every single clip I get from this video and other videos and split test them on ads to see what can drive an audience at the most cost-effective price. And then like just literally artificially build an audience. And then once I have the audience on the back end, you create all these ways to monetize it. And one thing I've seen you do that I'm curious about is you have a Patreon. So can you tell me a little more about that world? Because I don't know, like I see the value of it, but as an artist, I'm not really sure how I would, I just don't know anything about that world. Could you tell me like how you got into that and what your experience has been?
So Patreon is a monthly crowdsourcing platform where people can crowdsource their favorite creators, podcasters, musicians, so on and so forth. I heard about it through my buddy Belief in Fatherhood. He got on there relatively early. I want to say, dude, 2017-ish, into 2016, 2017-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. And he, was fairly successful. It allowed him to provide for his family initially off of Patreon because he couldn't get, the YouTube AdSense wasn't really taking off just yet. And so it was a platform introduced to me. I started using it a little differently in that primarily it's used, hey, just support your favorite creators, let them create. I said, you know what, I'm going to take this community model, membership model that Curtis King was using. Shout out to Curtis King. He had, I think, was it Curtis King TV or something, where he had like a monthly subscription, and then there would be all kinds of stuff packed into the subscription. And I said, you know what, I don't really care to like build out my website. And I also don't want to just make a thing about me where people are all about supporting me. Let me make it about the people and create a community of people that can come together around these different values I have: marketing, being independent, getting your music off the ground, being a critical thinker, being an outlier, being politically agnostic. Let me create a community. And the way it looks now, and it's evolved over the years, we started in 2018, and we do a Friday night music review thing, which is strictly like music review. People go on over Zoom with me. So I listen to their song or watch their music video, give them feedback over Zoom. And then on Sunday nights, we do just a group call that we live stream, and it's just basically like a Q&A. So that's a bit more broader. Sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's social issues, faith, whatever you will. And so what that has done is created an ecosystem of, first of all, artists meeting each other, discovering each other through my community, and then people connecting, podcasters and different thinkers and authors and pastors connecting that way. And it allows me to, when I see something special in somebody, I can then kind of press in and coach them one-on-one. And I don't like, some guys definitely pay me extra for that, but I'm looking after the success case study. And there's been one person specifically, and I don't want to put all their business out there, that has been a part of the community since the beginning. And then the end of last year, beginning of this year, lost his job, shifted, went all in on his business, and he's grossed over 6 figures just this year alone.
Hell yeah.
And grew a business like literally from nothing to something magnificent.
Doing
and it's
music?
been a lot of, I don't want to go into the details, but he does both. He does music, and he has an actual physical product that he sells. And dude, he's crushing it. I think he's going to be the new model. So as I'm thinking, like, one, promotion for the community, but also digital products, some type of course, I'm like, I want to have as many poster childs that I help become 6-figure entrepreneurs using these different models. Now, obviously, the person has to be an outlier. They have to be creative. They have to be good. They have to have a product, all those different things. And so I got one, and I got a couple others that are profitable. And I want to see, man, how many people could I help make 6-figure entrepreneurs connected to the arts and marketing and, that kind of stuff.
So let me ask you this. So, like, obviously, when it comes into being an artist and trying to figure out how to make this, you're juggling so many different things. How do you know what to prioritize?
I think it's, again, going back to self-awareness, but also paying attention to what's popping, like what's working for you organically, and then at the same time trying to scale that while saying, okay, now what do I want to be doing? Right. So for me, what's worked for me recently, like the 2 things that are really good for me, not necessarily like my Spotify revenue. It's not my merchandising. It's really my Patreon and YouTube is exploding right now, but also I make a lot of good money off of my sync licenses. So not the front end, iTunes, Apple Music, but the money that comes in 6 months from now, a year from now, after I put out a record. So I am kind of juggling the 2, publicly building my YouTube and my Patreon, privately producing a lot of music, producing a lot of tracks, working with artists behind the scenes. Why? Because I have an amazing relationship with MusicBed for sync licensing. And I could then scale that over, make music videos, make albums, right? Get some of that Spotify money, launch merch around it. And so I'm really just trying to diversify to 4 or 5 really popping revenue streams.
Which is like,
I think you got to do both.
Sync licensing, merch, shows, and brand deals, essentially?
No, I don't. Dude, I have zero desire to do brand deals. I think they're a headache. I got buddies that do serious, like 5-figure, 6-figure brand deals. And I don't want no parts of that unless it's like a company I'm already into,
You'd rather just sell your product? Is that what?
Yeah, exactly. Why am I going to pimp out my clout for something that I don't even own, right? So for me, my revenue streams is sync licensing is definitely number 1. I would say number 2 right now, this changes, but right now is the combination of Patreon and YouTube. And then I would say 3rd would probably be like DistroKid, iTunes, Spotify money. and then merchandising. Now I'm trying to focus on growing the merchandising. The music stuff is just kind of an autopilot, and then I'm aggressively going after YouTube because I just see the momentum there. So I'm going after it. But like my artist Paul Russell, he's blowing up on TikTok. He grew to over 100,000 followers on
So it's
TikTok.
like, it's more about finding your lane and just doubling down on it.
It's trying different things, seeing what works for you naturally, and then going all in on that, right?
Yeah.
So I tried TikTok. I grew to like 32,000 on TikTok. I'm okay on TikTok, but Paul grew to over 100,000. That helped him get his Instagram and his TikTok verified. His monthly streams are going up. He's going all in on TikTok. He's not trying to do YouTube. He's not trying to start a podcast right now. Now, maybe in a year from now, when he has, when he's generating more revenue and he has a bigger audience, maybe he'll go back and do more YouTube stuff. So it's just paying attention. TikTok wasn't really growing for me the way I wanted it to. I'm not doing it. My buddy Nick D got on TikTok in 2 weeks, grew to 50,000 TikTok followers, and it's exploding for him. So you got to pay attention. So my YouTube grows slower than TikTok because you can go fairly viral on TikTok quick, especially if you're a rapper. YouTube's growing slower for me, but my revenue on YouTube and Patreon is where I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, this is good. You know what I mean?
Every piece of content's an asset giving you dividends every single day.
Yes, absolutely.
So let me ask you this specifically with YouTube. So where I'm at, I've made, I think this is going to be like the 12th episode. I clipped everything up yesterday and took inventory. I have like, I think 41 clips that I could post onto my YouTube. Should I just post those like one a day, or like, what is your strategy? Just as much as possible, like on YouTube? Like, what's your content strategy there? Like, how do I, like, I don't know how much I should post essentially.
well, one, if we were doing this on my channel, we would be live streaming this in real time. The title pre-made, the thumbnail pre-made, hashtags pre-made. Depending on how long this would go, this may go unlisted immediately after we're done. As soon as it's done, I'm going into YouTube editor and I'm chopping this down into individual clips with good titles. I even got it down to a transition segment where I have a transition in my OBS and I just hit transitions in between segments, so that way there's kind of like a pre.
Is that like a smart? It's like a command on your keyboard, is what you're saying?
It is actually in OBS, and yes, I got this little thing called a Stream Deck right here, and it connects my OBS, which is OBS is primarily for like gamers, but a lot of podcasters started finessing it. And yeah, dude. And so I literally just create. I drop, I'd say right now, no less than 2 videos a day, no more than 5 videos a day. And but it's with the caveat that I'm talking on current events. It's streamlined. There's a system, but I'm also doing stuff that I know what I'm talking about. So I'm not just winging it. Right. And I'm also talking about current events and stuff I'm passionate about. So like I have a video right now. If I pull up my YouTube, my video from yesterday, I did 2 videos yesterday. Let's see, I'll tell you my top, who won the first presidential debate. And then I did 2 other videos about the debate. They're all doing amazing, top 10 videos. Right. And so, yeah, you drop 3-4 videos a day. Eventually, not only is it you can touch the algorithm, but it's just more shots at bat. Right. You're just more shots at bats. Well, but the caveat is tying it into something relevant.
What caught my attention about your strategy of just go is once I watched like 2 or 3 of your videos, then YouTube starts recommending to me. And when you're putting out all these different videos, I see them like everywhere. And it's like, if you keep clicking on them, like, YouTube just going to keep recommending them, and then you're just like sucking me into your ecosystem.
Yeah, dude, that's the dope part about YouTube. I feel like my content is similar to like a Joe Rogan and a Gary Vee, in that like people will watch my content and hopefully it will inspire them to go do something. And that's really the objective, right? So I don't want just people brainlessly consuming my content like I'm some kind of guru and you're just like, it's like motivation porn. You know what I'm saying? No. Like go do something with it. And therefore I have no like moral conundrums about putting out a bunch of stuff, because I know ultimately it will push somebody to go do something. And that's really what I'm after.
Yeah, you're beginning with that objective before you're creating the content.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. So let me ask you this. What do you think is the biggest thing holding you back right now?
The biggest thing holding me back, I would say I don't think it's holding me back, because it's equally as it's holding me back, it's pushing me forward. I'm married. I've been married for 12 years. I got
Mm-hmm.
a 5-year-old son who's going to be 6. And so that becomes my biggest motivation, but it also
Mm-hmm.
becomes my biggest thing to hit pause consistently and make sure that I'm like engaged as much as I can be at home. Um, and so again, I don't really think that that's holding me back as much as it's like a developing a balance. I think if I was a one trick pony and I just did YouTube and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
trying to make 2 or 3 beats a day, I wasn't working
Yeah.
on music, I wasn't doing but I literally went into YouTube. I think I could be one of the dopest YouTubers out there. So I think if
Mm-hmm.
anything, what's holding me back is that I'm passionate about music. I'm passionate about helping other artists. I'm passionate about a variety of things. And I've
Mm-hmm.
never been like this is my niche. I'm going to go all in on
Yeah.
my niche,
Yeah.
which long term sets me up, I think, to be more of a Joe Rogan type of
Yeah.
personality where I do multiple things. Short term, it's
It's kind of
very
like how
difficult
Joe
to
Budden, it's kind of like the Joe Budden model where you transition from music into media. And like, I mean, but that's just kind of how it is now. It's like it's almost like you can't just be an artist anymore. Cause like the people that, I mean, there's so many different lanes and so many ways to go about it. But like, at least for me, I feel like this need to, or this, I just see the value in having another way for people to connect with you outside of the music because it gives context to the music.
absolutely. And I think Joe Budden should have kept rapping, in my opinion. Like, I think he was a
Here's the thing:
phenomenal
he could
rapper and he should
drop
have
an
kept.
album right now and it would kill.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think
yeah,
the new model, in my opinion, the new model will be a hybrid of the Joe Rogan and the Joe Budden model. Because if you think
mm-hmm.
about it, Joe Rogan never stopped doing UFC
Yeah,
commentating. He never stopped doing stand-up comedy while his podcast blew up. And now he has arguably the biggest podcast in the world, which then empowers him to go do all these other things that he's passionate about. I think that's going to be the future of where all this thing goes. I think like
yeah,
we'll have a bunch of rappers in 10 years, 20 years that will be like the Joe Rogan type of figures.
yeah. I mean, I definitely like see the value of that model, and I've been having fun with it. Like as this gets picked up more, like it's crazy what this is evolving into. Like one of the really cool things about podcasts is I feel like more than it is like my biggest benefit so far has just been the networking I made from it.
Yeah,
Because
man.
it's one
It's
thing to
crazy.
like reach out to someone and try and do something with them through the DMs, but like if they know you're just trying to take something for them, they're not going to waste their time. Whereas like if you can come in and you can give them something, then that's going to get your foot in the door to where you can have, an actual interaction to where they can like have a better representation and like you can actually make a connection with that person, you know?
100%.
And like I've literally like I'm on episode 12 and I've lined up like marketing clients. I've gotten like all these huge opportunities. And, I haven't even started running the ads on this. Like, I haven't even, like, I'm getting all my content together and I'm going to start running like a marketing campaign for this podcast. But like,
Mm-hmm.
even just the benefits of getting to talk to people and find ways to where we can, provide mutual value for each other, where we both get what we want and like further ourselves. Like that alone has made it worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think expanding your network is one of the most powerful things anybody in any industry can do. And if you're creating content that is valuable to both parties, then I think people get super excited about that.
And then you see it pay dividends. Like I got a DM from, this pretty successful DJ the other day on a podcast he saw me on that I recorded like 3 months ago.
Mm.
And I just see it randomly pull in like opportunity. So I'm just like trying to put out as much content as I can. And like, it's cool seeing how it like comes back. Like I really view like my music like a stock, and it's like, I invest into that company that I have 100% equity in or 50% equity in if it's a feature. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I just see it pay me dividends on a daily basis. One thing I'm curious about is how were you able to grow your Spotify so big? Because you're killing it on Spotify.
Spotify initially was really big on the editorial playlists.
Mm-hmm.
as things are shifting and those bigger playlists are kind of getting eat up by the majors, right? Like the rap caviars and like the
Yeah.
big stuff. Not really getting on those playlists if you're an independent artist. Like back in the day, Russ would get on those playlists. Not really so much.
Yeah.
So I think Spotify, it goes back to trying to touch the algorithm and the organic playlist, right? So when somebody is listening to stuff and then a song gets suggested to them, just like YouTube, that goes back to making good music that isn't skippable, but two, that goes back to collaborations with other artists as primary artists. The more primary artist collaborations you could do with people that are equally as poppin' will help elevate you in that algorithm. And so for me, I was doing that fairly early on. I had a couple of songs that were like just legitimate, like this is a hit. You know what I mean? Like this is a hit. If Drake put out the same song, it'd be a #1 song. That's how I call it. That's what I call a hit, right? Like a hit for me is a couple million streams. A hit for Drake is a couple billion streams, right? So for me, it was that, making good records, some of them taking off organically in that ecosystem. And then, and don't get it twisted, like I definitely got some love on some like smaller playlists. And then what happened was, as Music Bed popped off, we would get these spikes in plays. So to go back to Drake's, there's a video game team that Drake owns. Somebody on that team used one of our songs in one of their vlogs on their video game team. Boom, that song gets a spike on Spotify. Every time an influencer uses one of our songs, boom, it gets a spike on Spotify. And so that's really how like the second wave of meaning a record could be out for a year. Like Will Smith just used a song of mine called Breeze. It's a song with me and Paul Russell. Just used a song. Song's been out for almost 2 years. It gets a spike on the plays. Why? Because Will Smith just used it. So I think it's also the sync licenses help a ton. But Spotify is about the algorithm in that make good music, submit it properly, do collaborations with artists as a primary artist, because that also sets off bells in the algorithm. Meaning if both people have 5,000 followers, this person has a different 5,000 followers, all 5,000 people go listen to the song the first day, boom, that sets off bells in the algorithm. Another thing is I do run a lot of stuff through Toned In. It's a partnership I have with a company called Toned In that basically streamline Facebook ads intended for Spotify playbooks, Spotify artist growth, right? And so I have an amazing partnership with Toned In. They're super dope. I have videos about it. I can't get into all of it, but it's Toned In is game changing for artists in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's what I do. I just do it through Facebook ads, so just without the template. And so tell me if you think this theory makes sense. I feel like the strategy is going to work. Feel free to poke holes in this. I'd love to hear your opinions. So basically, I think a good strategy for most artists, at least the strategy I'm using, is releasing one song every 3 to 6 weeks, putting $200 to $1,000 of promotion behind it, running Facebook ads to Spotify, and running that strategy until you have a large enough audience, and then building monetization on the back end through retargeting, through selling merch, shows, and that's pretty much the strategy.
Yeah, that's it. I think shows come last. I think in terms of building a music career, I would say, Spotify, getting people converted to Spotify followers and to Instagram followers, then to engage with you on Instagram, right? And then to buy a piece of merchandising. And then the last thing in the process, once they've already bought some merch, once they're already in your ecosystem, then you get them to come to a show. Just because what you don't want is you don't want to assume that the person that likes your song is going to come to a show. And then two, you also don't want to build your revenue streams on shows. Because say you do pop off on tour, now you're dependent on it. And look what happened in 2020. You had a bunch of dudes dependent. Indie and major artists depended on touring money as their main lion's share of their revenue. And now you got a bunch of brothers broke. I made a decision in 2019 to stop touring unless it was a huge bag and I could bring my family. So I only had like 2 shows canceled in 2020 because I switched on my revenue stream. So I would just say, be careful with like depending on show money, because one, it's harder to get somebody to come to a show. And two, if you do pop off as a touring artist, that's a lot of wear and tear on your body. That's a lot of time away from your loved ones. And God forbid there's another pandemic, you're stuck. I think the strategy is brilliant. I think it is where I think music is going to go. And that's why I tell a lot of people, man, go build a media company like you're doing, bro. You're doing the right things. You have other ways to get your money, and you're seeing your music like a business that you're pouring money into, not expecting a return for a year. I don't know how long you need to see a return, but if you're pouring $200-300 in a single, and then you're watching the numbers, bro, the moment one of those goes viral, you'll make all that back. And I would tell people also, if you guys really want to get deep on the Spotify, Facebook ad game, follow Andrew Southworth on YouTube.
Yes.
Brilliant YouTuber.
That's
and he gets in the weeds about this stuff, bro. And he has it down to a science where he knows if he spends $800 on Facebook ads, he'll make back 900. And that stuff is genius, bro. So yeah, shout out to Andrew Southworth. One of the best to do it. I don't go as deep
Andrew's
as he does.
Best.
He's amazing, bro.
If you guys want to see my episode with him, that's episode 4. But yeah, no, that guy's the best. Shout out to Andrew. So to completely switch topics 180. So one thing that I wanted to do on this podcast before I started it is just a little background on me. I grew up in a very agnostic family, right? And my family's whole thing they said to me was, we have no idea what's going on. Go figure it out for yourself. And up into this point, my knowledge of religion and understanding of the mechanics of it is literally like a first grader. So you're talking to someone with a completely clean slate who wants to use this podcast as an opportunity to talk to people from a bunch of different religions and hear why that has been so beneficial to your life. Because what I started realizing is it's all right, this is an area I've completely ignored, but the whole point of this podcast is to find things that make your life better. And if this is a topic that has been really beneficial for a lot of people, I want to explore. I want to turn that rock over, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think before I'll share my story, but I think for those people who are listening that don't identify as religious or find themselves as agnostic or atheist or whatever, I think the very first question I would ask is if what I told you was true, meaning if Christianity was true, would you follow it? Right? So that's out the gate, that diffuses the conversation, because then if it's true, it changes it reveals your heart, right? If somebody's like, no, F that, I don't want nothing to do with God. I don't whatever I say next makes no difference, right? But if what I'm saying is true and it opens you up to potentially following it, I think then that's where we could have an honest conversation about these things, right? So, and that's not necessarily a question for you, because it's not a yes or no question. It's just something to be thinking about. If Jesus is who he said he was, and if he did what I would say history proves he did, would you follow him, or would you still be nope, I don't want nothing to do with that guy, right? And so that's something I want people to just to hopefully diffuse diffuse the tension in there, right? Because if it's a no, cool, I'm not mad. That's fine. I would say I grew up in an interesting environment where we came out as religious refugees. As in Azerbaijan, Baku, we were raised in a Muslim state. Armenians, which is what I am, are historically Christian. They're really proud about being the first nation to identify Christianity as the world, their country's religion. So I grow up Armenian Orthodox, which is more or less similar to, it's similar to Catholicism, right? And then in the process, we come out, we're in America as refugees because of this tension between the RZ Muslims and the Armenians. We get forced out. We come here. My mom and my dad come out here together. They didn't have the most stable marriage. My dad remarries. I'm a part of this Orthodox church. They remarry him. My mom is like, yo, how can you guys remarry him? We're technically not divorced. I grow up super hostile towards the idea of religion because of this. My dad leaves, my mom gets remarried. The church seems super hypocritical to me. On top of that, I had some sexual trauma kind of connected to just bad stuff in the church, just a mess. So I remember being 10, 11 years old, not being agnostic, being full blown, I am an atheist. There is no God. If there was a God, why would he allow all this stuff to happen to me, right? And slowly, all of a sudden, there was people around me that would be like, yo, we're praying for you. My next door neighbor's mom, my best friend, his mom was moving drugs, got caught, trying to go through the airport with drugs, goes to prison for like a year and a half, comes back radically born again Christian, like radical, you know? And I'm just like, yo, you're full of crap. Like, you're not really about this life. And so my experience was my whole apartment building gets completely transferred. I'm still like, you guys are crazy. I'm in the streets. I'm getting arrested. I moved to North County, which is the suburbs. And I changed my path. I started playing basketball. That was plan A. I thought I was going to go to the NBA, right? Every kid from the hood thinks they're going to make it as a rapper or go to the ball. And so I thought I was going to make it to the NBA. That didn't work out. At the same time, I'm starting to date this girl. She invites me to church. Only way I could spend time with her on Sunday is if I go to church. I go to this church completely different. The music is different. The vibe is different. The people are different. It's not Orthodox. It's not Catholicism, if you will, right? It's just like church, like I guess you would call like a evangelical type of environment. And then at the same time, I started dating a Jehovah's Witness girl. I'm still agnostic or atheist. I don't know what I am at this point. And so I come into the faith as a skeptic, like, yo, what is the truth? Because these people are telling me this, these people are telling me this is what I've grown up believing, hostile to the whole idea of organized religion. And so I started reading books by ex-atheists and ex-agnostics who got radically converted. And I stumbled on this book called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. Lee Strobel was an investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune. Wife was a Christian. He gets radically converted. In the process of trying to disprove the claims of Jesus, he gets radically converted. And he comes to this notion that either Jesus is who he says he was, either he was Lord, or he was a liar, or he was a lunatic. Either he was God in the flesh and he died and rose and changed everything about history, or he was completely out of his mind and he was a lunatic, or he was a liar and he deceived people. You can't say Jesus was a good teacher. You can't say he was a moral guy. You have to pick one of those three conclusions in the light of history. That is how I came to the faith. It was like really logical, skeptical history. What is this whole thing? And I just literally read that book. I read that, which has been turned into a documentary and a film on Netflix. I would encourage anybody who's a skeptic, go watch that. I also read like a huge book called, it's called The Case for Christ. It's on Netflix. And it's dope. There's a documentary and there's like a movie, like a cinematic movie, like a theatrical movie about Lee Strobel's life story. He's still alive today. He does a bunch of stuff. He like does debates with atheists and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the evidence that demands a verdict. And dude, once I was convinced that like history made more sense for Jesus to be Lord, I literally was like, God, if you're real, Jesus, if you're real, reveal yourself to me. And that's another thing that like, if Christianity is true, would you follow it? Are people willing to pray that prayer, right? Are people? And I was at a point where I came to my wits end. I'm like, dude, if this thing is real, like, because it made sense intellectually. And once I prayed that, man, my life literally just transformed. The trajectory of everything changed. The things that I used to think were whack and corny, like church, like God, I started thinking were amazing. I got this weird hunger to like read the Bible and go to church. My life literally got changed. And here's the thing that most people don't want to talk about. People say, oh, religion's done a lot of bad things. Religion's done a lot of bad things. It controls people. It's divisive. People don't acknowledge the pragmatic side of having faith. In the story, in the book, Power of a Habit, it goes really in depth about the idea of just faith, like how powerful just faith is. If I believe that the creator of the universe is on my side, not as only is he on my side, he actually lived the life I couldn't live. He died the death I should have died. He resurrected and his spirit lives in me. There's nothing that I can't do. And it's pragmatic, meaning that it benefits my life in a really amazing way. It makes me a better husband. It makes me a better father. It makes me a kinder person, more patient person, more loving person. That is what the teachings of Jesus have done in my life. And it's as much about a mindset as it is about like a different, like I'm a different person. And my friends who remember me from back in the day when I was getting arrested, getting in trouble, being an atheist, they see what God has done in my life and they marvel at it because they were like, dude, we were telling you these things and you were like, you guys are crazy. And now, you know, you're this totally different person. And so that's the pragmatic side of it, man. And the faith side, the history side. So it just made more sense. It made more sense that Jesus is who he said he was than the contrary, which was that he was a liar, he was a lunatic, everything is an accident, which is kind of what atheism believes is like the whole world just combusted and started. And random, like we're like, I just don't think this is all random. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
that this conversation is random. I don't think this technology is random. I don't think this moment is random. I think
So,
there's a creator, a part of it all.
so when you're explaining to me what this is, understand I have zero context. I
Mhm.
literally know nothing about,
I
like, when you
hope I did
say,
a
like,
decent job.
okay, so no, here's what I got. Like, so what I want you to do for me is explain, like, when you say, like, you're following Jesus or whatever, like, what do you mean by, like what does that even mean?
It's a great question. So would you say you're a fan of Gary Vee?
Yes.
So would you say you're a follower of Gary Vee's teachings?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
in the same way, I'm a follower of someone's teachings, right?
Hmm.
Who said, love your neighbor as yourself, do unto others as you'd have done unto
Hmm.
you, right? I'm a follower of their teachings. Like, if we actually look at what Jesus taught, it was revolutionary for
Hmm.
where he was in space and time. What he taught about loving people of different ethnicities, right? The
Hmm.
story, there's a parable of the Good Samaritan, which has a ton of like um, social context that actually applies to our time and space today. The Samaritans, the Jews didn't get along. Jesus tells this crazy story about the Samaritan that the Jews didn't like and how he showed the most amount of mercy to the Jewish man that was beaten by robbers. And he basically said that's the parable of the Good Samaritan. When we say Good Samaritan laws, that comes from that story, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. So I follow the teachings of Jesus. I follow what he actually said to do, the same way I would say when Gary Vee says, yo, create content, empathy, self-awareness, right? I follow Jesus in that way, but I would take it a step further where I would say, I also believe Jesus when he says, I and the Father are one. I am going to go prepare a place for you. You will tear down this temple, but I will rebuild it in 3 days. And I take it a step further where I say, I also take him at his word through in the Bible and outside of the Bible, right? Because there's non-biblical scholars like Josephus that say there's amazing historical precedent that he actually died. We know he died, but then there's precedent that he rose 3 days later. So if he is one with the Father, if he is the one who conquered death and did miracles, then I'm placing my faith in him, not as just my savior or as my teacher, the way I would say, yeah, Gary Vee, that's an influencer of mine, but he's literally my Lord. He is who I follow, and it becomes more of a relationship in the same way that my son has a relationship with me as his father. I have a relationship with Jesus in the same way. So that looks like prayer, that looks like meditation, that looks like reading the Bible, and it becomes alive. It's really weird. It's hard to explain it, but
He's almost like
it
the ultimate personal development guru.
that's a way to the ultimate personal development guru who doesn't just do stuff for my
Who's
benefit, which
not
he does.
he's not trying to sell you, he's not trying to sell you a $2,000 marketing course on
That's the way to put it. He's not trying to sell me a $2,000 marketing course.
Facebook.
And he also addresses this issue that every other kind of worldview and world system acknowledges, but no one adequately addresses it, which is, if we look at the world, there's evil in the world. There's bad things happening to good people. There's just bad stuff. And it's really us falling short and us being jacked up as people. And he addresses that. And that's the issue of sin. And sin meaning that we are imperfect creatures. We fall short. Sometimes we do it on accident. Sometimes we do it willfully. And he addresses that by going to the cross and dying the death we should have died, right? And so not only
And
does he
what
do
does
the
that
heart
mean?
change,
All right, that part. So when you
that
say
part,
he died for our sins, like, what, I explain that to me.
so if we examine our own heart against God's standards, right? Jesus said, the law says like don't murder. We know like murder is wrong, right? We can look at like what's happening socially with some of these cops killing unarmed people, and we're like, that is wrong. That should not happen, right? Murder, right? And obviously with the police brutality thing, there's nuance and there's different cases. But when something like George Floyd happens, we look and we say, that's wrong. Somebody got murdered. That should not have happened. That shouldn't have played out that way. Well, Jesus says that if you hate your brother, that you've committed murder in your heart. right? Which is like, whoa, if you hate somebody, you've committed murder. That's radical. Then Jesus says, if you've looked at a woman lustfully, you have committed adultery in your heart. We know that cheating in a marriage is not good. We know that infidelity is not good. We know it leads to divorce, right? He says, if you looked at a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery, which is like, whoa, well, that means everybody's guilty. That means everybody has fallen short.
I'm definitely guilty.
Right? So no other worldview acknowledges, how do we deal with that, right? And we're talking about a perfect being. We're talking about a perfect being that's outside of our concept of time, outside of our linear start to finish, outside of our understanding. How does a broken, sinful, fallen person stand before a perfect, holy God without there being some type of penalty paid? Somebody had to do that, right? And if you're a murderer and an adulterer and you've done all these wicked crimes and you go before a judge, a good judge is going to sentence that person. A good judge isn't going to let a murderer walk away. A good judge is going to say, no, I got to send you to prison, because if I don't, that makes me an unjust judge. In the same way, a good, just God has to do something with the Hitlers and the Nazis. But let's take it a step further. What about the people that hate others in their heart? What about the people that committed? He has to do something. And so Jesus says, listen, I'm going to live the life that you couldn't live, the perfect life, but I'm also going to die the death that you should have died. The penalty of sin, the penalty of that judge, the justice we all should have gotten, Jesus takes that on the cross, and therefore we can now be in a right standing with God, because he takes our unrighteousness to the cross in a miracle, and then he gives us his righteousness. So now when God looks at those of us who are in Christ, he doesn't see sinners and adulterers and murderers and liars and thieves. He sees Jesus, because that's what happens. It's called substitutionary penal atonement. I know that's a big word. It just means that Jesus died in our place on the cross. And no one deals with that. No other worldview actually addresses that issue. So not only does he give me a new heart, a new life, new desires, new motivations, personal guru, everything you said, but he also deals with this issue of, gosh, if I really look at it and I really examine my own heart, examine my own motives, examine my own thoughts, I'm kind of a cruddy person, right? And he transforms me, but he also deals with that. And so I think that's pretty amazing. And I'm stoked that, like, I get to go to heaven.
So what do you think happens when we die?
I don't know, right? I don't know. So let me just say that. That is where, this is faith, right? So faith is the belief in something outside of our reality here in the now. So I don't know. What I think happens is that we are absent from this physical body, and our spirits go to be somewhere else, or your soul or your spirit. And I think there's a heaven, which is eternity with God, and I think there's a hell, which is, people freak out about hell. Hell is just separation from God, right? If God is a good God, he's not going to force people to be with him that don't want to be with him, right? That's why I said that question of, if Christianity is true, would you follow it? If Jesus is who he says he is, would you follow it? That's a heavy question, because why, if you don't want to follow Jesus, why would he want you to be with him in eternity in the afterlife? That's kind of like that's a very forced relationship. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
So the idea that, has made the most sense to me is this concept that, consciousness is like it's like a frequency, right? Like, and our bodies are like radio stations picking up that frequency. And as you develop consciousness, like, think about it. When you're a baby, you're not immediately conscious. Like, it's something you develop. So like, I just, like, to me, my theory is, like, as the brain develops, it tunes into that frequency that ends up being your consciousness. And then when you die, it's like, it's like that radio station, like went away or something. And then it's just back out in the ether until it gets picked up by a new radio station. And that would be kind of like my theory of, like, reincarnation. So, like, maybe.
So you would say the frequency, I would say the spirit, you would call it consciousness frequency. You would say that frequency kind of transcends into something else. And I would say that frequency goes to be with God or in some type of afterlife setting. That would be kind of like the differences. That I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that.
I feel like religion is almost just like a personification of like this thing that's too big for us to understand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, and I think religion is us trying to make sense of God and us
do you
trying to
think
make sense of the
religion is a
universe.
metaphor, or do you think are these real people? Like,
well, Jesus was a real person.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Jesus was a real person.
But you know, like the game Telephone, where like you tell a story to someone and then they tell it to someone else, and by the time you're on like the fifth person, like it's a completely different story. How do we know that Jesus wasn't just this like normal dude, and then these stories got like spread into something different?
So I'm not like an expert on this. What I would say is based on the number of manuscripts, right? So you're talking about one story being passed to one person, being passed on to one person.
Yeah.
That's not how the historical documents of the New Testament scriptures, which a lot of people, historians and scholars, find accurate, and also the secular writings of Josephus. It wasn't one person to one person. It was multiple copies of multiple copies of multiple copies.
So they had documentation.
They have documentation, but it's not just like I give you a copy and then you give somebody a copy. No, I make 50 copies and I pass it down to all the churches, and then these people pass it down. So when we look at the writings specifically of the New Testament, there are more manuscripts for the writings of the New Testament than there are for Shakespeare, than there are for Aristotle, than there are for, right? All these things, we would never question Shakespeare. If Shakespeare was real, we would never question that. But there's actually more manuscripts and more whether a historical book is deemed accurate is based on the number of manuscripts there are around it. And when you compare all these manuscripts, by and large, they're like 99% the same. You got the largest sample, right? Yeah. And so again, I would revert back to like those of you guys that are real. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but those of you guys that are really curious on like how do we form that Jesus was real? How do we form that he actually did these things and all that? There's an entire system of how scholars look at it. And you would be very hard pressed to find a scholar today that would be like, yeah, Jesus didn't exist, or Jesus wasn't around with the actual ministry. Now there's a lot of disputes on did he literally rise from the dead, right? I think there's enough precedent that there is. And I think the New Testament is a good foundation to start. But I also think there's other writers like Josephus and other people outside of scripture who are not Christian writers, by the way, who account for these things that Jesus was a real person. He died, he rose, and there was this huge movement started after him. Again, Case for Christ on Netflix. Highly, highly, highly recommend everybody to check that movie out. And it's just a good movie too, by the way. Like it's one of the best like Christian movies out there. But yeah, Case for Christ, incredible, incredible movie.
Are you optimistic about the future?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm optimistic because in my world, there is no downside. There is no, like, everything goes to hell. I die, I go to heaven. I get to be with Jesus. Everything goes bad, Jesus comes back. Everything, right? Like everything goes good, I get to be very successful and I get to help a lot of people. Right? So if we're talking world, so there is no downside for my life, my reality. Obviously there's a degree of trauma different people have, right? And so there may be some trauma, there may be some sickness, there may be something like that, but by and large, variables that I can control, or even the variables I can't control, I just don't spend a ton of time worrying about who's going to be president, who's going to be this, who's going to be that, because I know if I just focus on the things I can control, my life will be fine. So I'm very optimistic that's like a spiritual sense, metaphysical sense, but just from a political sense, like I don't think any politician has that much control over my day-to-day life. They might have control over how much I got to pay for healthcare or how much I got to pay in taxes. My day-to-day life, man, you know, that's why we have 3 branches of government. I think the founding fathers did a good job of writing in checks and balances, Supreme Court, all these things. No one president can screw up the nation and everybody's freaking out. And what if the socialism, Marxism versus, you know, fascism, and it's like, listen, it's too many isms. Everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be okay, right? And if we go down either path, you could always move to live somewhere else if you really wanted to. Like if you really wanted to, if you're a Republican and you don't like America, you can go live in Sweden, right?
Yeah.
If you're tired of fascism, go move to freaking Denmark or Canada, right? We could figure this stuff out.
Well, that's what you said that I really resonate is like when people ask my political stance, I just tell them my whole stance is pretty much just if you're going to rely on the government to get what you want, you're probably going to be disappointed. And you might as well figure out how to get it for yourself and figure it out. Because like you said, it's like there's a solution. And when you're sitting here like stressing about variables you can't control, that's just taking mental resources that could go towards finding a solution.
You know what I think it is? I think it's fear porn. I think people, media, news want us to continue clicking, continue watching, and it becomes fear porn. Just like when COVID hit, a lot of us were like trying to find the latest information on COVID. And then it was like trying to find the latest information on the protest. Now it's finding the latest information on the elections. It's like, listen, man, a lot of this stuff is there to keep you in that ecosystem, just like all these media companies. What does Spotify want you to do? It wants you to make media and music that keeps people on their platform. What does YouTube want you to do? To make content that keeps people on their platform. That's what this is all about. And so if I'm going to be on a platform, I'm going to consume the things that are going to build me up, give me hope, and help me help other people.
Yeah, man. So I just have one more question and then we're going to wrap this up. So I just launched this Reality Benders podcast, and I also have my own artist YouTube channel. Do you think I should keep those separate or under one entity?
I'm keeping everything under one entity for now. And once I get to that ballpark of a couple 100,000 subscribers, then maybe I'll break away and do other channels and stuff like that. But up until for now, I'm doing everything under one single channel. And then as I, build them out, then I will do that. And I feel like that's a pretty common, like best practices, like build on one platform, unless you're just doing completely like polar opposite stuff. Right. But it sounds like what you're doing musically and with your podcast and with your like shorter clips all kind of fall under the same brand, if you will. I have a desire to do like fitness stuff at some point, right? That would probably be, I'm going to blow up my YouTube channel and then I'll do a spin-off channel of like more fitness stuff, totally different niche. But you might see a little bit of fitness here and there on my channel. So I think you're doing it under one umbrella is a good look. I would continue doing that. That's what I'm doing. I feel like that's what a lot of people
see someone like Gary Vee, and he just posts whatever the fuck he wants on his YouTube, and it's all under the brand of him. Now, my one thought of doing it as a separate entity is just from an SEO perspective. Well,
here's the thing. Yes, you're totally right. From an SEO perspective, you will grow faster if you focus on one niche. Like if I just went in and I'm just doing political news, politically agnostic, I just did that, I would grow faster. But I don't want to do just that. And I also don't want it to be transactional when people go to me for the news instead of going to me for my perspective and the way I think. If they're there for the way I think, then I think, this is my opinion, I think they'll be more likely to go check out my music or more likely to go cop some merch because it's a deeper connection. So it's what Gary Vee talks about, depth over width. I want depth. And I feel like I got a lot of depth for the low amount of subscribers that I have. And that's based on like how much revenue I generate. Like that's how I look at it. Like how much merch am I selling? How much revenue am I generating? So I make more off of my YouTube now than a lot of people with 10x the following I have. You know what I mean?
Because you just put out more content.
I put out more content. People watch my content longer and people watch more of my content. The same person will watch stuff over and over because there's depth there and there's a connection there. And it's not just like, oh, I'm going here to hear the latest news. No, I'm actually giving you some type of valuable perspective on stuff. So I think if that's the way you're building it, go that route. It's going to take longer, but I think you'll be happier because you seem like a multi-dimensional guy like I am. But again, the right way to do it is build a niche channel for all of this stuff and then build a niche channel for all that. That's like the Sean Cano, like Think Media way. And those guys are crushing it. And that's a friend of mine. I'm building a personal brand, if you will. So it's a little different.
Well, one thing I saw that I thought was sick is how you had your podcast linked on your Spotify. And I didn't realize you could put it in the artist pick. like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that real quick, and it made me just start thinking about, as this podcast is developed, like it's, I'm only on episode 12, so it's still kind of forming, right? I had this idea initially of like, when I'm doing these conversations, it's with the goal of finding like actionable things I can take, and then when I'm clipping it up into, clips on Instagram and YouTube, I'm organizing it into categories like marketing, fitness, mindset,
Mm.
finances. And, you know, doing that, would that still work on like a personal brand channel?
I think so, because
I
it's
might be
your
just
perspective.
overthinking it.
I think
Yeah.
you're overthinking it. I think
Yeah.
it's your perspective on all these different things. And because you have a specific slant on what
Mm.
your take is on
It's my
motivation.
opinion on fitness, my opinion on my,
Yeah. So your opinion on fitness is going to be different than my opinion on
yeah.
fitness. Your opinion on nutrition is going to be different than, but it's all under the umbrella of you. I think that's more valuable. Again, slower growth, more depth.
But also, here's the thing that is interesting is I have the skill set of Facebook ads. So I know whatever platform I'm building out that I can drive a lot of traffic to it. So I'm just trying to create something that can have a high conversion rate.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
And I haven't seen, if you can use I've been curious about this and I've been wanting to test it, using Facebook ads to aggressively grow a YouTube page, or using YouTube ads to aggressively grow a YouTube page. I'm curious about those two. And I was just talking to one of my buddies literally before we got on the phone. I was on FaceTime.
Yeah.
Super successful entrepreneur, business guy.
Yeah.
Sales. I'm like, bro, sales is cool and you can go make 200-300K on sales, but you don't own what you're selling. I think you should go crush it, get this sales job that's flexible, and take all your disposable income and pour it into building your own YouTube page and see how long it takes you to do that. And I think that is ultimately like the move. So I think building that out, I think long-term you have more value because you are the brand, you are the product, and you have different ways to monetize it.
Yeah, and then that's the big key. So like coming back to my strategy with the like one song every 3 to 6 weeks and the $200 to $1,000. What I like about that strategy is it's like one of the big switches I made in marketing is I used to think it was about having that like viral hit, but it's no, it's like working out. It's about consistency that builds up over time. And once I made that switch, now it becomes about creating a streamlined strategy that is consistent. And then as you go through that reiterative process every single week, you just find things to tweak, like getting the better camera, or, oh, cool, I could have different camera angles or better lighting, or, oh, I need to add an intro or whatever. You just start finding things to, make it better, and it just gets there over time.
Or, and just to add something, or I need to not have an intro. That's what I started doing. I started not having an intro. I literally will do my streams. So what I'll do is I'll do my streams. And like the live stream starts different than the actual video. And then I go inside of YouTube and trim like the first 2 minutes as people are filing into the live stream. And then I have a different transition for the actual beginning of the content. I hit that transition and it's the little, Ruslan, King's Dream Entertainment, right? I hit that button and then I jump right into the content. So there is no, I don't even tell people who I am. It's literally that little 5-second, 4-second thing. And I go right into the content. I got that from Mike Winger, who's a huge YouTube pastor. You'd actually like some of his stuff as like an agnostic guy. You would love some of his stuff. And he was doing a thing, like an hour-long teaching on YouTube. And he was like, dude, I stopped doing an intro because I just get right into the content. That first 10 seconds, get to the daggone point.
You got to get them,
Get to the point.
Yeah, because you'd think it'd be like a branding move to have that intro, and it's like it creates an emotion with people. But our attention spans are just so low now that it's like if you want to get that watch time, you got to hook them immediately.
Right away. And get to the point and then reveal.
That makes it easier, though, because I can just clip it up because I'm just going straight into the points. You know what I mean?
That's why, and that's the dope part about YouTube Editor is when I stopped caring about an intro.
Oh, they have an editor in YouTube.
Inside of YouTube.
Oh,
dude.
Shit. What am I doing?
Game changer. I'm telling you.
And then you're recording this on a YouTube Live.
Like if we were doing this would be going right to YouTube.
And then as soon as this was done. To do that through YouTube?
I don't think so. I think YouTube Live is open to everybody. Yeah, I think YouTube Live is open to everybody. So I'm gonna do like a free live training on this, where I'm literally gonna do a live training about how I do my lives, and then how I chop them down, how I do the whole system. I'm gonna walk people through it. Because I think I don't see enough people utilizing that YouTube editor. The YouTube editor is a game changer.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking into that. Like for me, I've been in this last month in this huge like my focus has been on nothing but like streamlining, because
Mhm.
I see the whole picture now. Like I have the podcast, I know how to keep it consistent. I know how to take that pillar content, chop it up into a bunch of smaller content. I know how to do the Facebook ads now. So I know I can guarantee myself grow an audience. And I also
Mhm.
know that now all I'm missing is the capital part. So let me go offer this as a service for other people where I can, grow that just through hustling to like, I started like 4 or 5 weeks ago. I'm up to 11 clients now. So, just with the revenue streams I put in with that, I expect to have, 5,000 months, $5,000 a month coming in by the end of the year. And I'm
Mhm.
using all these other people's money to test all these ad strategies and then just learn from that and invest it into my own thing. And so now I'm starting to build out like a team of people. Like I'm hiring VAs overseas that I can, just save, 5 hours here, save 7 hours there. And I'm paying, $15 an hour or something to get like a good, like quality overseas VA. And then like, it's just starting to come together. You know what I
You're
mean?
killing it, dude. You're
Yeah.
literally doing what I recommend young artists to
Yeah.
do in our Patreon community. Literally, I just walked
Yeah.
somebody through this entire everything you just described. I just walked somebody through. So
Yeah.
you're literally doing it, and dude, it's awesome. So keep doing it. I
Yeah.
think you're really onto something. You're self-aware. You have the work ethic, and you have the funds and the resources to do it. And just make those incremental changes. And you don't need to start with a video switcher and multiple angles. Just start with the
Yeah.
camera. Just get a nice camera, then get a
Yeah.
second camera, then get a third camera.
Yeah. Well, I think I have my iPhone right now, and I have this app where it's supposed to be able to use it as a webcam, but it's just like it keeps messing up, and I'm just like I'm just using my MacBook for now. But it
There
doesn't
you go.
really
It
matter.
looks good.
People care about the content, like what you're talking about. Like, it
100%.
definitely, I think it helps to have that. But like, I mean, look at Gary Vee. He just uses he doesn't give a fuck. He just uses his like laptop webcam the whole time because people just care what he's saying. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So cool. Anything you want to plug or promote?
No, man, if people want to check me out, dude, everything is just Ruslan KD, RUSLAN KD. If people got questions for me, I usually respond to almost every single Instagram question, so they could just DM me on Instagram, unless they're like, "Yo, can I get a favor or something like that?" But other than that, I respond to just about everybody on Instagram. So
Yeah.
the easiest way to get a hold of me, just shoot me an Instagram DM, YouTube, Ruslan KD. Everything's just Ruslan KD, man. So thank you for interviewing me, bro. This
Yeah,
is
man,
this
that
is a
was
really
great.
interesting interview. We talked about a lot of stuff. Let me know when this
Yeah.
drops too, so I could share it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you, brother.
Cool. Have a good one.